So we are in the 12th lesson, correction of accounting errors. And last week we did the errors that do not affect the agreement of the trial balance. So what are these errors? So these errors are simply trial balance again or talanna berry errors. Again, some errors that may occur in accounting process might not affect the agreement of the trial balance. Trial balance එකට impact වෙන සමහරක් errors. එතකොට ඒ වගේ errors වලදී total of the debit column is always equal to the total of the credit column of the trial balance. So these are known as the errors that do not revealed by the trial balance. So we learned about these examples. What are these examples? So the first type of this error being a complete omission of the transaction from the books. Complete omission of a transaction from the book. එතකොට වෙන්න පුළුවන් දේ මොකක්ද? If a particular transaction is not recorded in a prime entry book, such a transaction would not be entered in the ledger accounts. එතකොට ledger accounts වලට මේ transaction එක ඉන්නෙම නැහැ. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? මේක trial balance එකට pass වෙන්නෙම නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ ledgers වල කොහෙවත් සඳහනක් වෙලා නැහැ. මේ වගේ error එකක් ආවම අපි කොහොමද correct කරන්නේ? උදාහරණයක් විදිහට හිතන්නකෝ invoice එකක් credit purchase එකක completelyම දාලා නැත්තම් අපි කොහොමද කරන්නේ? credit purchase එකක් කියන අපි purchase එකක් කියන debit එකක් credit purchase එකක් වුණාම liability එකක් create වෙනවා. එතකොට මේ transaction එක අපි general journal එකේ record කරනවා. එතකොට purchase account එක debit කරනවා 15,000 වලින් creditors account එක creditors account කියලා දාලා වෙලා අපි credit කරනවා 50,000 වලින් right. ඊට පස්සේ general journal එකේ කරද්දී අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? මේ පොඩි යට note එකක් දානවා correction of errors of omission of purchase invoice of rupees 50,000 කියලා right. ඊට පස්සේ දෙවනි type of error එක තමයි අපි දැන් කතා කරන්නේ මොන වගේ errors ගැනද? trial balance එකේනු තල්ලන්න බැරි errors right. Recording of incorrect value of a transaction in the prime entry books. එතකොට මේකෙදි මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? Incorrect value එකක් record කරනවා. For example, credit sale invoice of 20,000 has been recorded as 2,000 in error. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ 20,000 sale එකක් record කරලා තියෙන 2,000 කියලා. දැන් මොකද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? හැම ledger එකකටම 2,000 ගානේ තමයි entry එක pass වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. අර 20,000 කියන එකේ 18,000ක් pass වෙලා නැහැ. එතකොට පළවෙනි එක මුලින්ම මොනවත්ම pass කරලා නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ තනිකර omission එකක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. දෙවෙනි එක තමයි incorrect value එක. එතකොට incorrect value එකක් වුණාම මොකක්ද කරන්නේ? අපි ඒ වෙනස pass කරනවා. general journal එක through අපි entries pass කරනවා ඒ වෙනසට. For example, දැන් මෙතෙන් දැන් credit sale එකක් 20,000 වල හැබැයි record වෙලා තියෙන 2,000 නම් අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? 18,000 debit entry එකකුයි credit entry එකකුයි pass කරනවා. right. තව example එකක් අපි ඉගෙන ගත්තා discounts received 1,500 එකක් record වෙලා තියෙනවා 1,300 කියලා. එතකොටත් අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? අර වෙනසට entry එක pass කරනවා. okay. වෙනසට entry එක pass කරනවා. that is 200. ඊට පස්සේ recording same transaction twice in the accounting books. අපි මේකට කතා වුණා duplication එකක් කියලා. duplicate වෙලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට මොකක්ද මේකද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? purchase invoice of 10,000 on credit has been entered twice in the book. Purchase invoice of 10,000 has been on credit has been entered twice in the books. දෙපාරක් 10,000 එකක් purchase invoice එකක් record වෙලා තියෙනවා. purchase invoice එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? අපේ expense එකක්. එතකොට original entry කියන්නේ debit කරනවා purchases account එක 10,000 වලින් credit කරනවා creditors account එක 10,000. ඕක තමයි අපි කරන්නේ. එතකොට ඒකට මේක අපි දැන් reverse කරන්නයි ඕනේ. මුලින්ම debit කරපු purchase account එක අපි credit කරගන්නවා 10,000 වලින්. මේ original entry එකදී debit කියලා 10,000 වලින් debit කරගත්ත purchase account එක අපි credit කරගන්නවා. අනික අතට creditors account එක 10,000 වලින් credit කරගත්ත creditors account එක අපි reverse කරනවා 10,000කින් debit කරලා right. එතකොට අපි බලමු fourth error එක. Recording the value of a transaction in an incorrect account instead of the relevant account. අපි මේකදී කතා වුණා office equipments ගැන. office equipment එක purchase එකක් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපේ asset account එකේ තමයි අපි record කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වුණාට මොකද කරලා තියෙන්නේ debit account එක තමයි purchase කරලා තියෙන්නේ. Purchases account එක තමයි debit කරගෙන තියෙන්නේ. office equipment කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? office equipment කියන්නේ asset එකක්. asset එක වැඩි වුණාම debit කරගන්න ඕනේ asset account එක වෙනුවට අපිට මොකද්ද කරලා තියෙන්නේ මෙතෙන්දී error එක විදිහට ඔයගලන්ට අපි කලින් සති කතා වුණා right office equipment that has been purchased for the business use for rupees 200,000 is debited in the purchases account. හරිද? එතකොට purchases account එකේ අපි ඒක රිවර්ස් කරගන්න ඕනේ අර asset account එකට හරියට entry එක pass කරගන්න ඕනේ right අපි මොකද කරන්නේ office equipments එහෙම නැත්නම් asset account එකක් අපි debit කරගන්නවා 200,000 වලින් අර purchase account එක වැරදියට debit කරගත්ත එක right වැරදියට debit කරගත්ත එක office equipments has been purchased for the business use of rupees 200,000 is debited in the purchases account මේ debit කරගත්ත purchases account එක අපි credit කරලා අර entry එක reverse කරගන්න right ඊට පස්සේ අපි ඒකටත් අපි notes ටික ලියාගත්තා එතකොට ඒ part එක ඉවරයි අද අපි කතා කරන්න පටන් ගන්නේ accounting errors that affect the agreement of trial balance. So today we are going to learn about the accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. So initially we discussed about the errors that do not affect the agreement of the trial balance. ඒ කියන්නේ trial balance එකෙන්වත් හොයාගන්න බෑ මේ errors ටික. නමුත් දැන් අපි හොයාගන්න ඒ කියන්නේ අපි දැන් කතා කරන්න යන්නේ accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. ඒ කියන්නේ trial balance එකේ indicate වෙනවා මේ errors ටික. right? එතකොට a difference would rise between the total of the debit and the credit columns of the trial balance due to a certain error that had occurred in the process of accounting. These errors are known as the errors which affect the agreement of the trial balance. The ledger account should be checked to identify what such errors are. However, it would take considerable amount of time to detect such errors. Therefore, such difference should be posted to a suspense account until those errors are identified and corrected. දැන් මොකක්ද මේකදී අපි කතා වෙන්නේ? අපි මුලින්ම ඉගෙන ගත්ත මොකක්ද? accounting errors කියන ලොකු picture එක ගත්තට පස්සේ accounting errors that do not affect the agreement of the trial balance කියන part එක මුලින්ම අපි ඉගෙන ගත්තා. දැන් අපි ඉගෙන ගන්න යන්නේ accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. That affect the agreement of the trial balance. එතකොට මොනවද මේ errors? මේ errors තමයි කලින් error එක වුණාම ඒක trial balance එකට බලපාලා නැහැ. හරිද? හැබැයි මේ error එක වුණාම trial balance එකට බලපානවා. trial balance එකට බලපානවා කියලා මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ? right? trial balance එකට බලපානවා කියලා වෙන්නේ trial balance එකේ debit column එකේ credit column එකේ තියෙන values equal වෙන්නේ නැති වෙනවා. So they are no longer equal. Okay? That is the error. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? දැන් කලින් පාර වගේ නෙමෙයි මේ පාර මේ errors ටික ආවට පස්සේ මේ වගේ error එකක් ආවම ඒ කියන්නේ debit column එකයි credit column එකයි හදිස්සියවත් සමාන වුනේ නැත්නම් මේක ටිකක් ලේසි වැඩක් නෙමෙයි. එතකොට අපිට වෙනවා හැම ledger account එකක්ම check කරලා ඉවර වෙලා මොකක්ද error එක කියලා detect කරගන්න. ටිකක් අමාරු වැඩක්. හරිද? එතකොට මෙහෙම මේ විදිහට ටිකක් වෙලාව යන හින්දා අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? අපි business accounting වලදී අපි කරන්නේ අපි suspense account එකක් හදනවා. ඒ suspense account එක හදලා ඉවරලා අර වෙනස pass කරනවා. right? ඒක තමයි අපි කරන්නේ. අපි බලමු අපිට නිකන් example එකක් විදිහට බැලුවොත් එහෙම දැන් සාමාන්‍ය scenario එකකදී වෙන්න ඕනේ දැන් මෙතන තියෙනවා මේ ජනකගේ business එකේ trial balance එක. right? සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වෙන්න ඕනේ මේ 900,000 වලින් මේ debit පැත්තයි credit පැත්තයි equal වෙන්න ඕනේ. okay? හැබැයි what has happened is now the debit side is 8 lakh 8 lakh 950,000 okay ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ගත්තොත් debit පැත්ත 8,95,000ක් වෙනවා right හැබැයි credit පැත්ත වෙන්නේ 1,09,000 so there is a difference of 5,000 දැන් එතකොට මේකදී අපි ඇත්තටම කරන්න උනොත් වෙන්නේ අපි මේ ඉන්ඩිවිජුවල් ලෙජර් accounts ඇතුළට ගිහිල්ලා cash account එක, transport expense account එක, sales account එක මේ accounts වලට ගිහිල්ලා ඉවරලා බලන්න ඕනේ මොකද්ද වැරදුන තැන කියලා. right? දැන් එහෙම බලන්න වෙලාව යන හින්දා මොකද කරන්නේ? අපි suspense account එකක් හදලා ඉවරලා අර වෙනස මෙතන තිබ්බ 8,95,000 8,90,595,000 මෙතන 9 මෙතන 900,000. එතකොට මේ 5,000 එක අපි වෙනස සස්පෙන්ස් account එකක් කියලා වෙනම පාස් කරගන්න. right? එතකොට අපි දැන් මෙතෙන්දි බලන්නේ ඒ වෙනස හොයාගත්තට පස්සේ වෙනසට කොහොමද adjustments ටික කරන්න කියලා. right? okay.
Yes.
Then we can start writing the note. So put a subheading accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. So I will read this out and then you can write it down. A discrepancy between the total of the debit and the credit columns in the trial balance can occur due to specific errors in the accounting process. These are known as the errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. To identify these errors, the ledger accounts must be carefully reviewed, which can be time consuming. In the meantime, the difference should be temporarily recorded in a suspense account until the errors are detected and corrected. එතකොට මොකද කරන්නේ අපි temporary suspense account එකක් create කළා ඒ suspense account එකට pass කරනවා මේ වෙනස. ඒ කියන්නේ debit column එකේ credit column එකේ වෙනස අපි pass කරනවා suspense account එකට. So you can put a subheading accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance and you can start writing this part. Okay. Now, students take 5 minutes and complete this. Okay. Why it is 1:27? Please complete this. ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේක ලියාගෙන ඉවරද? තාම ලියනවද? Okay, so what we discussed was, so when there is a difference between the total of the debit side and the credit side, we are creating a suspense account and we are passing that difference into that suspense account. Okay, that is what we are doing. So when there is a difference between the total of the debit and the credit balances in the trial balance, the difference should be recorded temporarily into an account called suspense account, which we have already learned. So until when? කොච්චර වෙලාවක් වෙනකල්ද මේ සස්පෙන්ස් account එක create කරලා ඒකට මේ entry එක pass කරලා තියෙන්නේ until such errors are identified and corrected. Okay, so a suspense account is created in the following way. So how are we going to create the suspense account? Identify the difference between the total of the debit and the credit balance of the trial balance. අපේ trial balance එකේ තියෙන debit side එකයි credit side එකයි වෙනස identify කරගන්න. අර මම කලින් example එකේ ඔයගොල්ලන්ට පෙන්නපු විදිහට නම් 5000. Okay, then insert that difference on the side where the deficit exists in the trial balance and balance the trial balance. As the reason for this shortage is not known yet, write the word suspense account in the front of the difference in the trial balance. Then record the value of the shortage in a separate suspense account. එතකොට අපි කොහොමද ඒක කරන්නේ? Now in this particular example අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම before identifying this difference 5000, okay, මෙතන there will be 5000 different. Here it will be 8,95,000, whereas here it will be 9,900,000. එතකොට there is a difference of 5,000. මුලින්ම අපි කරන්නේ මේ difference එක identify කරගන්න. ඒ difference එක කීයද? 5,000. එතකොට අපි temporary create කරනවා මේ suspense account එකක් කියලා එකක් trial balance එකේ. ඒක create කරලා අර difference එක තියෙන පැත්තට. ඒ කියන්නේ මෙතන 8,95,000ක් තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඒ අඩු පැත්තට මේ 5,000 එක pass කරගන්න. ඊට පස්සේ අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? අපි වෙනම suspense account එකක් කියලා වෙලා ledger account එකක් create කරලා ඉවර වෙලා ඒකට මේක pass කරගන්නවා. suspense account එකකින් එක ledger account එක හදලා debit side එකේ the difference in the trial balance කියලා 5,000 එක pass කරගන්නවා. හදිස්සියවත් අපි හිතමු yes.
So if you don't mind, could you explain in English?
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, now so we are learning about the suspense account. Okay, so as we discussed already, what has happened is now in the trial balance, the debit column and the credit column are different. Okay, in the debit side, there is a difference balance, and whereas in the credit balance, there is another different balance. So these balances, once we total, they are not tally, they are not equal. Okay, so to rectify this error, what we have to do is we have to create a separate account called suspense account. Suspense account. So how do we create it? To the side that where we have a deficit. Once we total out and once we check the balance, to the side that we have a deficit, we just record the trial balance and then we include that deficit amount under that suspense account row. Okay, so for example, we have been discussing about this particular thing, Janaka's business. If you look at this one, now here we have recorded suspense account and 5,000. So before this scenario, before recording this, what has ideally happened is here in the credit column, we have 900,000. Okay, and once we total out these things, we will get 8,95,000. So what is the problem? Debit side of the trial balance is in short of 5,000. Okay, debit side of the trial balance is in short of 5,000. Okay, then as it is in short of 5,000, what we are doing is we are creating a separate column, separate row or separate account called suspense account. Okay, we are creating a separate account called suspense account and we are writing it in a additional row as suspense account and we include the deficit amount 5,000 here. Okay, if you can notice. Now let's say this happened the other way. Okay. Now let's say debit side we got 900,000, and credit side once we total these three items. Okay. Now let's say now let's say wa- now in the credit side, once we total these items, if we get a balance of let's say 8,95,000 to credit side, and in the debit side we are getting a balance of 9,000, then what we are doing is we are creating that suspense account and we are passing that 5,000 on to not the debit side but the credit side. Okay. So as we create this account, okay, what we are doing is we are also creating a separate ledger account. We are creating a separate ledger account and we are passing that difference in the trial balance into that ledger account. So ideally there are three to four steps. Okay. First, you check the trial balance. Number one. First, you check the trial balance. Then you identify whether there is a difference when you total the debit column and when you total the credit column. Is there a difference between this debit column and credit column? You identify that. Okay. Now, with reference to as an example, in this particular scenario, once you total out your debit column, you see here it's 8 lakh 95,000, whereas in the credit column it's 9 lakh or 900,000. Then what does it mean? ඒකෙන් මොකක්ද කියන්නේ? So that means this debit side is in short of 5,000. Debit side එක 5,000ක් අඩුයි. Okay. Then you are creating a suspense account and you are on a separate row, on a separate line, you are including that 5,000. So what are you doing? First, you check your trial balance. Second, you identify the difference, and then you are creating a suspense account and you are including that difference. Okay. A difference එක අපි දානවා. එතකොට අඩු පැත්තට තමයි දාන්නේ. You have to write it in the side where you have the short. Okay. Then as the fourth step, what you are doing is you are creating a separate ledger account and including that amount in that ledger account. Okay. So that is what you have to do. So accordingly, if a difference exists on the credit column of the trial balance, record such difference on the credit side of the suspense account. On the other hand, if the difference exists on the debit column of the trial balance, insert such difference on the debit side of the suspense account. That was what I have been talking about all along. Okay. The trial balance as at 31st December of 2025 of Janaka's business is given below. It has been balanced temporarily by writing suspense account in front of the difference in the trial balance. එතකොට අපි කතා එන්නේ මෙන්න මේ example එක ගැන. So that is how we do it. So let me repeat the steps. Okay. How do we create that suspense account? First, identify the difference between the totals of the debit and the credit balances of the trial balance. Then insert that difference on the side where the deficit exists. අර මං කිව්ව short එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා. I told there is a short. So you have to include that deficit in the respective side of the trial balance. And then, as the reason for this shortage is not known, we are writing the word suspense account. We don't know what is the reason for this difference. So we are mentioning a suspense account in front of the difference in the trial balance. And then we record that shortage in a separate suspense account. So I hope you got it. Is it all good, students? Did you understand what I explained?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's move on to the note. I will read this out and then you can write it. Okay. Suspense account. When there is a difference between the totals of the debit and the credit balances in the trial balance, that difference should be recorded temporarily into an account called the suspense account until such errors are identified and corrected. A suspense account is created in the following way. First, identify the difference between the totals of the debit and the credit balances of the trial balance. Identify the difference between the totals of the debits and the credit balances of the trial balance. ඒ කියන්නේ debit side එකේ credit side එකේ වෙනස අඳුර ගන්න. Then insert the difference on the side where the deficit exists in the trial balance and balance the trial balance. එතකොට අර අඩු පැත්තක් තියෙනවනේ අපි හිතමුකෝ debit side එක 5000යි credit side එක 10000යි කියලා. Let's say debit side is 5000 and credit side is 10000. Then in debit side you have 5000 short. Okay, so you record that 5000 short or the 5000 difference in that debit side and you name it as suspense account. Why? As the reason for this shortage is not known yet, write the word suspense account in front of these, in front of the difference in the trial balance. අපි දන්නේ නැහැ වෙනස, so we still don't know about the difference. Then record the value of that shortage in a separate suspense account. ඊට පස්සේ අපි we create a separate suspense account and we record that difference. Okay, let's look at the next slide as well. Accordingly, if a difference exists on a credit column of the trial balance, record such difference in the credit side of the suspense account. Right? අපි දැන් කලින් කතා වුණා වගේ difference එක තියෙන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් මෙතන difference එක කියලා අදහස් වෙන්නේ අර short එක. Okay, ඒ කියන්නේ අඩුව තියෙන්නේ short එක තියෙන්නේ credit column එකේ නම් අපි ඒ difference එක එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒ short amount එක deficit amount එක credit side එකේ suspense account කියලා record කරනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් on the other hand, if the difference exists on the debit column of the trial balance, insert that difference onto the debit side of the suspense account. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ අපි කතා කරන difference එක එහෙම නැත්නම් short එක තියෙන්නේ debit side එකේ නම් අපි මොකද කරන්නේ debit side එකට include කරනවා අර 5000 කියලා බලලා suspense account එකේ. අපි තියෙන වෙනස අපි ඇවිල්ලා වෙනම suspense account කියලා වෙනම include කරනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් trial balance එක tally වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ. අරක අපි අඳුර ගන්න කල මොකද කරන්නේ? We are creating a suspense account and we are passing the entry. So the trial balance as at 31st December of Janaka's business is given below. It has been balanced temporarily by writing suspense account in front of the difference of the trial balance. Okay. So you can start writing, put the heading, subheading suspense account, and then you can start writing the note. Okay. Okay, so we learned about the accounting errors that do not affect the agreement of the trial balance initially, and now we are learning about the accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. So we studied, now if we find a difference, we make a separate suspense account and we are including it. Okay, so now we are looking at another thing. So after creating that suspense account, we cannot keep that suspense account. I mean, we cannot keep it. We have to solve it and we have to sort it out. Okay, so we are going to learn how are we going to sort of like sort out this suspense account with respect to accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. Okay, accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. Okay. So the reasons for the difference in the trial balance should be identified after recording the difference in the suspense account. So as we correctly identified after creating the suspense account, we have to identify these differences. So therefore, certain entries have to be made in the suspense account to correct the errors. To correct the errors, you will have to make some entries. The suspense account will be eliminated from the books of the account after correction of all the accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. Therefore, when such errors are corrected, one of the double entries of the correction should be entered to the suspense account. Okay, Let us now consider the errors that revealed by the trial balance and how such errors are corrected. Okay, then now when we have errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance, we are making a suspense account. So after creating that suspense account, we have to sort it out. As I said, we have to solve it and we have to clear the balance in the suspense account. And once we are correcting that suspense account, or once we are correcting the entries with respect to errors that has affected the agreement of the trial balance, what is happening is one entry is passing to the suspense account. Api errors correct karaddi, one entry is passing to the suspense account, and that account balance is nullifying little by little. Let's say there are two errors which were in amount 5,000. Okay. And once we identify the first error, now before identifying, now let's imagine for example, okay, so we have the suspense account, okay, and we have two errors. Okay, error one, let's say hypothetically, okay, error one which is 5,000, and error two which is also 5,000. So now what is happening is in the suspense account we have a balance of 10,000, which is the total of these two. Okay, which is the total of these two. So once we sorted out the first error, what happens is your suspense account goes to a balance of 5,000 because you have sorted out one error. And once you sorted the other error, then your suspense account balance is going to be zero because you don't have any errors. Okay, so that is what is going to happen. So therefore, when such errors are corrected, one of the double entries of the therefore, when such errors are corrected, one of the double entries for the correction should be entered to the suspense account. Okay, and now let's consider those errors that are revealed by the trial balance and how such errors are corrected. Okay, okay. Now we are going to learn about like these errors, accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. So and and then we are going to learn how to correct these accounting errors. Okay, so omission of one entry from the books. First one being omission of one entry from the books. For example, payment of telephone charges of 15,000 has been recorded only in the cash book. Okay, so what is happening in this transaction? I mean, what you should do is you should debit telephone charges account by 15,000. Okay, and then you have to credit your cash account, okay, by 15,000. Now here what has happened is you have debited your telephone charges, sorry. Uh, Now what has happened is you have recorded only the cash book entry. Okay, so you have credited cash book by 15,000, and once you check the trial balance, your debit side is in deficit of 15,000. Again, debit side deka trial balance okay 15,000 will in deficit because you have omitted one entry from your books. Okay, here the relevant value is not debited to the telephone charges account. Therefore, telephone charges account should be debited to the correct this error. On the other hand, the cash book is already credited correctly. The total of the debit column of the trial balance is less by 15,000 rupees due to this error. Okay. As a result, the debit balance of the rupees 15,000 appears in the suspense account. Accordingly, the relevant general journal entry to correct this error is shown below. Credit entry of 15,000 should be made to correct this suspense account. එතකොට අපි කලින් තේරුම් ගත්තා වගේ මේකෙදි මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ, what is happening here? Initially what should have ideally happened is you have to debit your telephone charges account by 15,000 and you have to credit your cash account by 15,000 because this is a payment of telephone charges. Now what has happened is we have not recorded this debit entry. ඔයා මේ debit entry එක දාලා නැහැ. As you have not entered this debit entry, what is happening is your debit side, your trial balance debit side is in deficit of 15,000. is in deficit of 15,000. Then what you do is ideally you are creating a suspense account and passing 15,000 onto your debit side of the trial balance. And later on you find this out, and now we are looking at how to correct this error. So in the general journal, what we are doing is we are debiting that correct account. Okay, that is my telephone charges account by 15,000, and I'm crediting my suspense account by 15,000. Correction of omission of the telephone charges of rupees 15,000 in the telephone charges account. Okay, so in the general journal, initially we are recording it here, and then what we do is our telephone charges account, the ledger account, we are debiting by 15,000, and suspense account we are crediting by 15,000. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? අර trial balance එකේ now initially what we have done is, since debit side is in deficit of 15,000, we created a suspense account, and on the debit side we have included 15,000. And now what we are doing is, after identifying that error, අර කලින් ඩෙබිට් කරගත්ත සස්පෙන්ස් account එක හරිද? මොකද ඩෙබිට් සයිඩ් එක අඩු වෙලා තිබ්බේ. අර කලින් ඩෙබිට් කරගෙන තිබ්බ සස්පෙන්ස් account එක we are crediting by 15,000, and that correct entry or the omitted entry, and we are passing it to the right account, telephone charges account. Okay, did you understand this? Let me stop the recording and ask you. Okay, then let's write the note. Correction of accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. The reason or the reasons for the difference in the trial balance should be identified after recording the difference in the suspense account. Therefore, certain entries have to be made in the suspense account to correct the errors. The suspense account will be eliminated from the books of the account after correction of all accounting errors. Okay, so what will happen after correcting all accounting errors, suspense account will be eliminated. Okay, therefore, when such errors are corrected, one of the double entries for the correction should be entered in the suspense account. Let us now consider the errors that are revealed by the trial balance and how such errors are corrected. So can you take 2 to 3 minutes and write this? Write it quickly as we are running out of time. Now it is 2:10. By it is 2:13. Please complete it. Please write it quickly. Okay, then let's move on to the next slide. So we are talking about the first error. So you can put a sort of a like heading, correction of accounting errors that affect the agreement of trial balance, and the first one being omission of one entry from the book. The first error that is identified under the correction of accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance and how we are going to correct it. For example, payment of telephone charges of rupees 15,000 has been recorded only in the cash book. Here, the relevant value is not debited to the telephone charges account. Therefore, the telephone charges account should be debited to correct this error. However, the cash book is already credited correctly. The total of the debit column in the trial balance is less by 15,000 due to this error. As a result, a debit balance of rupees 15,000 appear in the suspense account. Accordingly, the relevant general journal entry to correct this error is shown below. Credit entry of rupees 15,000 should be made to correct this in the suspense account. And then we will have to write this entry. So can you write this? Take about 5 minutes and complete it. Okay, after completing this slide, please complete this slide. Take a couple of minutes and please complete it. Okay, so we are discussing about the accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance and correction of these accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. So we studied the first one, that being the omission of entry from the big books, and the second one being making one of the double entries with the correct value and the other entry with the incorrect value. So what has happened is, one entry you are doing the correct value, the other entry you have a incorrect value. For example, cash sale for rupees 54,000 has been debited in the cash book correctly and has been credited incorrectly by 45,000 in the sales book. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ cash sale එකක් කරලා තියෙනවා. So you have correctly debited your cash account because you have collected your cash. But in your sales account, which is an income account, so you have recorded it as 45,000. Okay. Here, the sales account has been credited less of rupees 9,000. Due to crediting rupees 9,000 less in the sales account, the total of the credit column of the trial balance is 9,000 less than balance of that rupees 9,000 will appear in the credit side of the suspense account. To correct the error, the suspense account should be debited with rupees 9,000 and sales account should be credited with 9,000. By doing this, suspense account will be removed. So now what is happening? Now in this example, so what has happened is your cash sales account, okay, your cash account, you have cash account and you have your sales account. What has happened is cash, since you have received the cash, you have debited it correctly by 54,000. Then in the sales account, what has happened is you have credited it only by how much? 45,000. Okay. Then you can see there is a difference of 45, difference of 9,000 or a short of 9,000 on the credit side, because instead of 54,000 you have recorded only 45,000. 54,000 වෙනුවට you have recorded only 45,000. Okay, then what you have to do is, now initially what you have ideally done is you have created the suspense account and you have created 9,000 on credit side. Okay, suspense account again 9,000 credit එකක් දාගෙන තියෙනවා under the trial balance. Then now, since you have identified this, what you can do is you can credit your sales account by 9,000. Okay, to correct the error, you have to credit the sales account by 9,000 and debit your suspense account by 9,000. Then what happens is that credited 9,000 earlier in your suspense account, that will be nullified. Okay, so the corrected entry is you have to debit your suspense account by 9,000 and credit your sales account by 9,000. එතකොට මේකදී entry එක pass කරන්නේ, the entry that we are passing in this particular example is the difference. For that difference only we are passing. Okay, so you're correcting it like this: suspense account debiting by 9,000, sales account crediting by 9,000. You record it in general journal. Correction of sales account by rupees 9,000, which was recorded less errorly. So you can start writing the second point, put the subheading, making one of the debit entries with the correct value and the other entry with the incorrect value of transaction, and start writing this. You can, in a point form, you can write this, and let's write down the general journal afterwards. So please start writing this. So if you have completed this slide, then you can write down this slide. So you can just draw the general journal, take a couple of minutes and complete it. So then we are moving into the third point. Okay, accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance and how to correct these accounting errors that affect the agreement of the trial balance. Okay, recording of the double entries of a transaction in the same side of the account. මේකෙදි මොකද වෙන්නේ? You have recorded the double entries but on the same side of the account. So both entries of a transaction may have been entered in the same side of both entries of the transaction may have been entered in the same side of the accounts in the error. So for example, let's look at an example to understand this better. Okay, cash received from debtors of rupees 5,000 has been debited to both the cash book and the debtors account. Okay, due to above error, each account has been debited by 5,000. Okay, so what has happened is cash received from debtors rupees 5,000 has been debited to both the cash account and debtor account. Okay, what has happened is it has been debited to both. Okay, due to the error, each account has due to above error, each account has been debited by rupees 5,000. So no account has been credited. Ek account they have not credited. Therefore, the total of the credit column of the trial balance is understating by rupees 10,000. Now, the important thing here is now it is understating by 10,000 because now one thing you have overstated the debit side by 5,000, and the next thing is you have omitted another 5,000 on the credit side. So the difference is 10,000. So this is an important thing that you have to sort of like remember. So this is just not 5,000. So the difference will be 10,000. Okay, it is creating a difference of 10,000. It's an important thing that you should remember. Okay. Accordingly, 10,000 should be debited to cancel the suspense account. So, and then 5,000 should be credited to the debtors account to cancel the amount debited incorrectly. In addition, 5,000 should be credited to the debtors account to correct the error. So, accordingly, the debtors account should be credited a total of 10,000 to correct the error. Okay. So then the correction entry goes as below. So the suspense account, you are debiting by 10,000, and debtors account, you are crediting by 10,000. Okay. මේක තේරුණානේ කියන එක. Like, let me explain. Okay. The මේකෙදි මොකක්ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ? What has happened here is now cash received from debtors rupees 5,000 has been debited to both the cash book and debtor account. Okay. So what should ideally happen? Okay, original the correct scenario is now you are receiving cash from debtors. Okay, so you debit your cash account. So debit your cash account and credit your debtors account because debtors is coming down. Okay, now what has happened is you have debited both the cash account and debtors account, right? You have debited both the cash account and debtors account. A cash account debiting thing is all fine. That is nothing to worry. Now the problem is instead of crediting debtors account, you have debited debtors account. Okay, instead of crediting debtors account, you have debited your debtors account. So what should you do now to correct that debit, additional debit? You have to add one credit of 5,000. Okay, to correct that error made by debiting it, and then to correctly enter the credit side, you have to add another credit of 5,000. Then only you are getting the complete picture, the correct picture. Then only you are getting the correct account. So debitors account will be credited by 10,000. So that's how. Make a tell me. So let me pause the video and ask you. Okay, then we can write this down. So you can take a couple of minutes and write this note. So you can firstly write this slide, and once you have finished writing the first slide, then you can write this slide with the general journal as well. Okay. Okay. Then let's start writing the note.